and refused admission while others were going inside. The very master who had attached a price ticket to the man and put him up for sale along with other rejects from his household staff. There's a slave who has paid his master back, one who was pushed into the first lot too, the batch on which the auctioneer is merely trying out his voice. Now it was the slave's turn to strike his master off the list, to decide that he's not the sort of person he wants in his house. Callistus' master sold him, yes, and look how much it cost him. How about reflecting that the person you call your slave traces his origin back to the same stock as yourself, has the same good sky above him, breathes as you do, lives as you do, dies as you do? It is as easy for you to see in him a free-born man as for him to see a slave in you. Remember the Varus disaster. Many a man of the most distinguished ancestry, who was doing his military service as the first step on the road to a seat in the Senate, was brought low by fortune, condemned by her to look after a steading, for example, or a flock of sheep. Now think contemptuously of these people's lot in life, in whose very place, for all your contempt, you could suddenly find yourself. I don't want to involve myself in an endless topic of debate by discussing the treatment of slaves, towards whom we Romans are exceptionally arrogant, harsh, and insulting. But the essence of the advice I'd like to give is this: treat your inferiors in the way in which you would like to be treated by your own superiors. And whenever it strikes you how much power you have over your slave, let it also strike you that your own master has just as much power over you. I haven't got a master, you say. You're young yet. There's always the chance that you'll have one. Have you forgotten the age at which Hecuba became a slave? Or Croesus? Or the mother of Darius? Or Plato? Or Diogenes? Be kind and courteous in your dealings with a slave. Bring him into your discussions and conversations, and your company generally. And if at this point all those people who have been spoilt by luxury raise an outcry, protesting as they will, there couldn't be anything more degrading, anything more disgraceful. Let me just say that these are the very persons I will catch on occasion kissing the hand of someone else's slave. Don't you notice, too, how our ancestors took away all odium from the master's position, and all that seemed insulting or degrading in the lot of the slave, by calling the master father of the household, and speaking of the slaves as members of the household, something which survives to this day in the mime. They instituted, too, a holiday on which master and slave were to eat together, not as the only day this could happen, of course, but as one on which it was always to happen, and in the household they allowed the slaves to hold official positions, and to exercise some jurisdiction in it. In fact, they regarded the household as a miniature republic. Do you mean to say, comes the retort, that I'm to have each and every one of my slaves sitting at the table with me? Not at all. Any more than you're to invite to it everybody who isn't a slave. You're quite mistaken, though, if you imagine that I'd bar from the table certain slaves on the ground of the relatively menial or dirty nature of their work. That muleteer, for example, or that cowhand. I propose to value them according to their character, not their jobs. Each man has a character of his own choosing. It is chance or fate that decides his choice of job. Have some of them dine with you because they deserve it. Others in order to make them so deserving, for if there's anything typical of the slave about them, as a result of the low company they're used to living in, it will be rubbed off through association with men of better breeding. You needn't, my dear Lucilius, look for friends only in the city or the Senate. If you keep your eyes open, you'll find them in your own home. Good material often lies idle for want of someone to make use of it. Just give it a trial. A man who examines the saddle and bridle and not the animal himself when he is out to buy a horse is a fool. Similarly, only an absolute fool values a man according to his clothes or according to his social position, which, after all, is only something that we wear like clothing. He's a slave, but he may have the spirit of a free man. He's a slave, But is that really to count against him? Show me a man who isn't a slave. One is a slave to sex, another to money, another to ambition. All are slaves to hope or fear. I could show you a man who has been a consul, who is a slave to his little old woman, a millionaire who is the slave of a little girl in domestic service. I could show you some highly aristocratic young men who are utter slaves to stage artistes. And there's no state of slavery more disgraceful than one which is self-imposed. So you needn't allow yourself to be deterred by the snobbish people I've been talking about from showing good humour towards your slaves instead of adopting an attitude of arrogant superiority towards them. Have them respect you rather than fear you. Here, just because I've said they should respect a master rather than fear him, someone will tell us that I'm now inviting slaves to proclaim their freedom and bringing about their employer's overthrow. Are slaves to pay their respects, like dependent followers or early morning callers? That's what he means, I suppose. Well, anyone saying this forgets that what is enough for a god in the shape of worship cannot be too little for a master. To be really respected is to be loved, and love and fear will not mix. That's why I think you're absolutely right in not wishing to be feared by your slaves, and in confining your lashings to verbal ones. As instruments of correction, beatings are for animals only. Besides, what annoys us does not necessarily do us any harm, but we masters are apt to be robbed of our senses by mere passing fancies, to the point where our anger is called out by anything which fails to answer to our will. We assume the mental attitudes of tyrants, for they too forget their own strength and the helplessness of others, and grow white-hot with fury, as if they had received an injury, when all the time they are quite immune from any such danger through the sheer exaltedness of their position. Nor indeed are they unaware of this, but it does not stop them seizing an opportunity of finding fault with an inferior and maltreating him for it. They receive an injury by way of excuse to do one themselves. But I won't keep you any longer. You don't need exhortation. It is a mark of a good way of life that, among other things, it satisfies and abides. Bad behaviour, constantly changing, not for the better, simply into different forms, has none of this stability. Letter number 48. I shall reply later to the letter you sent me while you were on your journey. It was as long as the journey itself. I must first take myself aside and deliberate what advice I should give. For you yourself, before consulting me as you are doing, gave long thought to the question whether you should consult me at all, so I ought to be giving this question of advice far longer thought, on the principle that it takes you more time to solve a problem than to set it, particularly when one course is to your interest and another to mine. Or does this make me sound like an Epicurean again? No, if a thing is in your interest, it is also in my own interest. Otherwise, if any matter that affects you is no concern of mine, I am not a friend. Friendship creates a community of interest between us in everything. We have neither successes nor setbacks as individuals. Our lives have a common end. No one can lead a happy life if he thinks only of himself and turns everything to his own purposes. You should live for the other person if you wish to live for yourself. The assiduous and scrupulous cultivation of this bond, which leads to our associating with our fellow men and believes in the existence of a common law for all mankind, contributes more than anything else to the maintenance of that more intimate bond I was mentioning, friendship. A person who shares much with a fellow human being